So I don't have to do like last Monday and have to sit here for another 30, 45 minutes and re-record it. All right, so I believe everybody should be able to see the screen, our lecture notes. And Peter, I think you can see them too. First thing that's gone right all day. Um, this is week 12. And this week we're going to go through a lot of material. So be prepared for a lot in lecture. I will be posting the lecture slides for the entire week later today. And we will go through them on today and on Wednesday. I did tell you that the second part of this course was going to kick in the high gear, and there's going to be a lot of information. And I think I'm living up to that. So there's an article by Maslin and Olbian. Now, Olbian is actually a very well-known author in the field of systems theory. I actually have a huge book on complexity when they're the second author, I think, or first author of that book. They co-wrote it. And so they are prolific authors. In their article that you have available on Canvas, they pointed out that when there is a low level of leader-member exchange, remember that's what LMX stands for, employees can begin to feel like they need more or have no way to access the leadership. So they feel that they need more access or that they are unable to access the leadership. Yet there are situations with a high level of leader-member exchange, the employees often reported enhanced levels of satisfaction and effectiveness. So there are many instances where the leader-member exchange is non-existent and the level's real small. The employees feel that they cannot sit down with the leadership. They can't give them feedback. They can't communicate with them. However, in situations where there is a significant degree of exchange between leaders and members, the staff actually feel more satisfied and more effective in their job. Now, why would that be important? Because as a leader, you want to increase employee satisfaction, employee motivation, employee engagement. You want to increase these because you want happy, satisfied, fulfilled employees. They're going to perform at higher levels and they're going to be more creative typically. Now, LMX, that leader member exchange, is directly linked to the social exchange theory. And that was pointed out by Maslin and Obian. Social exchange theory is an area that I am very familiar with. It was one of the main pillars of my dissertation. I did extensive research into it, into the seminal research, meaning the foundational, the original research. This is a process wherein individuals initially interact and then test each other to determine if they possess the necessary components to fully develop such a relationship. So there's an exchange that occurs in a social setting. And at this phase, what the individuals, what the members, the elements, what they are doing is they are feeling out the territory. They're getting an understanding of how the other individuals function and work, and if a relationship is possible. Remember, when we use the word relationship, we leave our limited way of thinking, because relationship isn't just a romantic relationship or a family relationship, but you as classmates, as peers in academia, build relationships. In the workplace, you build relationships. So if the relationship produces adverse outcomes, the interaction will remain at lower levels and not progress further, according to the authors. And that right there is really the social exchange theory at play. If there isn't a significant exchange in that social setting, then people are going to begin to self-censor. And remember, self-censorship is something that we do want to try to mitigate. We want to reduce that. Sorry, I had to put some Burt's Bees on my lips. They're going to fall off my head. Oh, what happened? Okay, there we go. So we're looking basically at two types of relationships here. You have low quality LMX relationships and high quality LMX relationships. These low quality leader member exchange relationships can develop into high quality LMX relationships, but the leader needs to begin to put in the necessary effort. Okay. And it has to be done in a sustainable fashion. As a leader, if you just go into your system and you just dump a bunch of positive interaction on Monday, and for the rest of the week, you are distant and unapproachable, then you are not going to be building those relationships into that high quality LMX level. It has to be sustained. So don't enter into something if you can't sustain it. Instead of basically, and I hate to use a word, it's from psychology, but particularly when dealing with narcissists, love bombing. Don't love bomb your people. Don't all out just in one day act like you are extremely concerned about their well-being, that you're completely open if you can't sustain it. Maybe it's wiser to do just a little bit to make yourself real. Because we each have days where we can give more than others. So look at what you are able to give on your worst day and make that the baseline. And then build up a little from there. Don't set the bar so high that you can't sustain it. Maslin and LBN pointed out that each person in a dyad relationship, meaning that there are two parties involved, must see the other making an effort to build the relationship. Remember, a didactic relationship, we talked about that, I think it was last week or the week before. You have two individuals in this relationship. We're not talking about the leader with the entire team. We're talking about the leader and the individual. And each one of these relationships with the team, that is a didactic relationship. The leader might be in 5, 6, 7, 8 different didactic relationships, and they have to be making positive effort in each one. A dyad in this study included the manager-employee relationship, and this impacts the quality of the LMX relationship, the leader-member exchange. Because if you are putting that sustained effort into that didactic relationship, then you're going in a way that's sustainable, then you're going to increase the overall quality of that relationship. So in this class, if I interact with Peter and I contribute to that relationship in a sustainable way, that relationship can build to a high level of quality. But if I slack in the relationship building with Bonnie and Jacob, I'm not succeeding in really working with my team because that relationship between myself, the leader, and each individual in that team is essential. Now, remember, we're looking at this from systems thinking, from that point of view. So that interaction that we want to discover, that we want to find when we're looking at the system, that interaction, that is that didactic relationship. That is that social interaction going on between the leader and each employee in an individual relationship. And then, of course, we got to look at the totality of the relationships. So if there's a team of 5 people, what is the relationship like between me and employee A, and employee B, and employee C? We got to consider that when we're looking at the system. When there is equality in the LMX relationship, the leader-member exchange relationship, each party tends to find that relationship more satisfying. Well, that's really common sense. If you think to relationships you have with family members, with a romantic partner, with your close friends, when you treat each other as equals, when you treat each other with that consideration that each person has got intelligence, each person has empathy, each person has a valid perspective, isn't it just in generally better? Doesn't it make for better Thanksgiving dinners and better holidays and better time with individuals? Of course it does. The same is true with your team. Continuing with the article by Maslin and Albion, These balanced LMX relationships are not based only on work-related interaction, but also on the social aspects of the relationship. Remember, we're looking at systems thinking. We're looking at this holistically. So I look at the interaction between myself and Bonnie, and I evaluate it. Then I look at the interaction between myself and Jacob, and myself and Peter, and I look at the work aspect. Then I pause and I look at the other social aspects. When we're at the coffee pot, what are we saying to each other? How are we interacting with each other? If Peter comes to me and says, I'm having a horrible week, my kitchen is flooded, my dog is sick, my kid is in the hospital, do I have empathy? Am I showing him empathy? That is that other social aspect. When he comes in with great news or he's celebrating something, do I celebrate with him? So as a leader, you're more than just a manager. You may also be a manager dealing with the nuts and bolts of the organization and that team. But if you are the leader, then you are concerned about that leader-member exchange. Mason and LBN pointed out that supervisors, leaders, often strive to improve the work-related aspects of the relationship, while the employee tends to focus on the social aspects. So if I am just in my leader state of mind, I'm thinking about the task, the project our team is doing, and I'm dealing with each person in that light. However, each member on that team, they're more concerned about, do I have empathy? Are they able to share joyous moments with me? Do we have that social exchange, that interaction? So what should we do as a leader? Should we only stay focused on the work-related aspects? No. We need to make the effort. Initially, the leader needs to make the effort in a sustainable way to improve that social interaction. Find out when the individual's birthday is. Bring them a card. Find out more about their life. Show empathy. So when one party in that didactic relationship puts in more effort than the other, respect is reduced. And if you remember back to Clark, respect is very essential because you got that respect and permission exchange going on in psychological safety. You don't want to reduce the respect, and you don't want to see that permission to reduce either. You want things growing in a sustainable way. Very rapid, quick growth is typically not something I actually put much stock in. I like to see a gradual progression, step by step, growing. That to me seems like it's going to last the test of time. So inclusion safety requires respect for the individual's humanity. If you recall back to Clark, remember the one criteria for inclusion safety, that person is human. Learner safety requires respect for the individual's innate need to learn and grow. And contributor safety requires respect for the individual's ability to create value. You don't want to see a reduction in respect in any of these capacities due to a low LMX relationship going on. Challenger safety requires respect for the individual's ability to innovate. In Maslin and LBN, they found that there was a link between effort and respect. And that means that an effort had to be applied to the relationship so that respect could be felt. So if you want to take your team through the stages of psychological safety, you as the leader need to be contributing sustainably, in a sustainable fashion, into that relationship so it grows. You want to increase that individual's feeling of that social exchange in a real and genuine, sincere way, because people can tell if you are not being sincere and genuine. Mesa LBN also noted that research indicates low quality LMX relationships typically dissolve. So if I have a team and I have a high quality LMX relationship with one individual, but a low LMX relationship with another, I shouldn't be surprised when that second person finds a different job elsewhere and leaves because they don't feel the respect. They don't feel that I'm seeing and treating them as though they are a human, that they have a need to learn and grow, a need to contribute, a need to create and innovate. The length of that LMX relationship, we're looking at a positive relationship here, indicates whether the dyad will put in the effort to positively develop the relationship further. If I have a relationship with a team member that has lasted 1 week, we still are on the unsteady ground. We're still testing each other out. We're still building that respect. We're still building that LMX exchange going on. But if we put in the effort over time, and it does take both individuals putting in effort, but with the leader typically has to be the one to be the initiator of that effort, then we can see that relationship growing into something that can last for a really long time, developing into somebody that you can contact if 2 or 3 years down the road and you're working on a project and you need to bring somebody in that you can trust, you could turn to that person. Or if you need some advice, you could turn to that person. Future efforts on the part of each person in that dyad, that dyad of the relationship, the future efforts depend on the tenure, that longevity of the relationship and the overall perceived quality of the relationship. So you don't want your team to feel like you are not consistent. You don't want them to feel like you are only on occasion concerned about their social well-being. You don't want them to feel like you only occasionally see them as being human. You want it in a sustained and prolonged manner. Maslin and OBN also found that when the leader or manager put forth effort in the relationship and the employee responded positively, the relationship developed further. So here we see, it's almost like Barry Osher uses the word dance a lot, okay? It's almost like a dance. The leader puts in the initial effort. The employee responds and begins to contribute positively into that relationship. And they nurture it over time and it grows because they're involved in that dance of relationship. However, when the manager or leader puts in the effort and the employee does not respond positively, that relationship will remain negative and the level of respect will decline. So the leader can actually increase the level of respect, so can the member. The leader can reduce the level of respect, so can the member. If the leader is contributing into that relationship and really working in a sustainable way, but that individual refuses to receive it, that person is not going to respect that leader. They haven't given time for that LMX relationship to become high quality. Once again, you can pretty well count that that individual will be moving on to another position in the near future because they have not begun to reciprocate relationship. Now, of course, that is contingent upon the leader initiating it. If the leader doesn't initiate it, then the employee, there's no reason they should even try to build a relationship. So let's turn our attention back to Oshri. I do hope that you've been taking time to read the stories and case studies in the book. These will help you see very clear examples of what Oshri's talking about. Oshri writes in a way where he teaches through example a lot. And I like that. Act 1 in the book explored the consequences of our blindness to external factors, our ability to see other parts of our system and our system's history. Okay, so in Act 1, we're trying to identify the totality of what encapsulates or incorporates what our system is incorporated of. And We want to look at our system over time. So we go into the past. We want to see how that system functioned over time. Act 2 is going to examine our internal blindness, that inability to see ourselves and the actions we take without awareness or choice that leads us out of the possibilities of partnership and into relationships of opposition, antagonism, disappointment, and warfare. When we are blind in that system, in the relationships of that system, we inadvertently do things that will push the others away. And what comes in place of that positive LMX didactic relationship? Hostility, tension. Oshri asked an interesting question. Can we recognize the dances while we are dancing? So when we are in that dance of, what was it, spatial blindness and blind reflex, the dance of blind reflex, can we see that we're involved in that? He also asked whether we can see the systems we are a part of. Can we recognize the positive or negative aspects of that system we're a part of? Can we recognize the various components? Now, before we go on, I think that we can see parts of the system that we're in, but we really have to set ourselves into a position of removing bias, removing preconceived ideas or notions, and really, really willingly trying to step out of that system and look in almost like a disinterested third party. That's hard to do, but it is possible. So the dance of the blind reflex. Tops can feel burdened due to the massive amount of complexity they face. Now, a brief aside here. I don't care if a person is a top, a middle, a bottom, an end, a provider, a customer. Human existence is complex. A human is complex. In the physical makeup, in the psychological makeup, we are very complex critters. So we all experience a massive amount of complexity. But the tops carry that added burden of the complexity of that system, the complexity of that team, that department, that organization. They are faced with the stress of being accountable. They're faced with the complexity of being accountable because they're answering to multiple people. They're receiving orders from multiple people. So we all have complexity, but tops, they have the normal complexity of being human, plus the complexity of being at the top of the system. Oshri wrote, when interacting with tops, we are not just dealing person to person. We are dealing with people living, sometimes struggling to survive in a world of complexity and accountability. There are lots of issues to deal with. So if you are in a system and you feel like you are experiencing more complexity and accountability than you normally would as just being a human, you might be a top. So when we interact with leaders, with the tops, we got to keep in mind that one, they're just like us, a complex human life, but they also have the complexity of living that life. I use the example of a broken faucet or a broken sink often, or a dog being sick or a child. Whether somebody's top, middle, bottom, end, customer, provider, we experience things in our life. We go through time periods where we have family members who are ill or who pass away. We go through things where our cars break down. So don't go to a top expecting them to have it all figured out and be perfect. Peter and I were having an interesting conversation briefly before class. You see, this week, it's only Monday. And I already feel like this has been one of those weeks where every day is going to be a Monday. I couldn't even untie my shoes properly earlier when I went to the gym. It was ridiculous. When something as simple as taking my socks off becomes problematic, I begin to wonder what's going on. Well, we all experience that. Whether you're a leader or a follower, we have life issues. And sometimes they make sense and sometimes they don't. So when you go to somebody who's in a position of authority, just remember that. Oshie pointed out that tops often feel like they are totally responsible for the entire system. Another indicator that you might be a top if you feel responsible and accountable for that system. Tops are concerned with the system's intricacies, such as the vision and mission, long-term goals, planning, or employee issues. So if you are concerned about these things on a regular basis, if you find yourself losing sleep over these topics, guess what? You're a top. One can know if they're a top if they are losing. So I already said that. Okay. Tops tend to worry that they are disappointing everyone else in the system. When you're in leadership, there is a sense of being alone. You might have a team of 10 people, but you alone literally carry the weight of everybody's issues, everybody's requests, their need for resources to carry out the task, their need for direction, their need for knowledge, their need to learn, their need to share socially, the need for the elements relationship building. And tops can sometimes feel like they're disappointing people because they're failing. They may not be failing like they see or they feel, but just the simple fact that they are concerned that they are creates a psychological imbalance. Leaders actually face a lot of what's called imposter syndrome. If you're not familiar with imposter syndrome, it is being in a position and feeling like you should not be there, that you're not qualified to be there, that you're an imposter. Just remember that when you talk to the person who's at the top. Now, bottoms, they can feel oppressed by the insensitive higher ups. How much of that is miscommunication? How much of that is the bottom not realizing that the top is dealing with a complex life in the system and in other systems, such as their family, their friendships? Maybe that top isn't insensitive. Maybe that top is super stressed because the car is broken down, someone's in the hospital. So last week we learned that Oshie pointed out that a bottom can feel invisible and vulnerable. So now that invisibility and that vulnerability has expressed itself as feeling like you're being oppressed by the people in power. You're being oppressed by them. And just as with the tops, bottoms are impacted by the same complex nature of life, but they feel that they have no control over their situations. If you want to know if you're a bottom in a particular system, what kind of control do you have? How much control of that system do you feel that you have? If you feel you have no control, then maybe you're a bottom in that system. Remember, you could be a top in system A, a bottom in system B, and a middle in system C. And since we all belong to multiple systems, we're going to be at different levels, at different roles in those different systems. That only adds to the complexity of life. Middles, they feel torn. They become weak, confused, fractionated, with no minds of their own, according to Oshie. Oshie pointed out that many times a middle can feel like they are being torn between two or more directions. I know I mentioned about middles that bottoms come to the middles needing resources, time off from work, pay raises, whatever. Well, that middle cannot provide what that bottom needs. They got to then leave that conversation, the interaction with the bottom, go to the top and bring that request to them. because the top is the one that has the ability to provide these things. So literally the middle is the go-between between the leadership at the top and the employee at the bottom. And that person in the middle literally can feel like, I really want to help the people on the team, the bottoms. I really want to be there for them, but the top is not giving me what I need in order to do that. I don't have the resources being provided for me to turn around and give to the bottoms. So when you go to talk to that middle management, remember, not only do they have the complexity of life affecting them, not only do they have the confusion of being in multiple systems at different levels, but they're literally torn in two directions. And if they can't provide what it is you're seeking, open your eyes, open your heart, have some empathy, because they may not be able to provide because they are not able to obtain what you need. Oshri diligently noted that middles are just trying to survive life as well. He also noted that they, the middles, are pulled between you and others. What you want from them, they don't have. They need to go get it. And what others want from them, they need to come and get from you. So when the supervisors at the top want a status report or a project, that middle is going to have to come to the team and get that information. And when the team comes to that middle and says, we want a pay raise, we want time off, or we need more resources to do this task, that middle then has to go to the top to get it. So they're just the go-between. The middles can often feel as though they're all alone in the system. So the tops can feel alone, the middles can feel alone, and the bottoms can feel oppressed and invisible, therefore alone. Oshri noted that the middles often lack positive feedback. All they hear from the tops are how their team and they are failing. All they hear from the team, from the bottoms, is that they are failing them as their middle manager, as their leader. When in reality, that person is trapped. I think that's the most stressful place to be in a system, is in the middle. Yes, the tops deal with the complexity, they deal with the weight of accountability. But I think in the middle, you're literally in a place where you can't please anyone. It can be frustrating. And then you don't have anybody giving you that positive feedback, that encouragement that will help you. So let's turn our attention now to customers. Customers can feel that they've been righteously done to, as Oshri put it, screwed. How many times have you, as a customer, felt that the store screwed you over? We all have been there. Oshri noted that customers feel neglected by the providers. And I use the example of going to AT&T with a problem with my phone. And I feel neglected because I get passed from one person to another in their customer service department. And no one can answer my question. I feel neglected. Oshri wrote that they, customers, are not getting the attention they feel they deserve. They are shunted from one person to another. Products and services are not coming to them as fast as they want, at the level of quality they want, and at a satisfactory price. We've all been there. Customers can feel that they are optional and ignored. You see, as a customer, you can easily be replaced. If the company has got a product that people want, let's say an iPhone and service for the iPhone. If I decide I'm unhappy with AT&T and I decide to leave that company and go get my service from another source, they can easily replace me. They got advertisements, they got people standing in line for products and services. So I, as the customer, can become angry. I can be frustrated. Blame is spread throughout the entire system. We can see stakeholder theory applied both internally and externally. Or stakeholder theory deals with how does the organization treat its customers, the people that provide the raw resources, the products? How do they treat the employees? The employees, that's the internal aspect of the stakeholders. The external is anybody that comes to that organization to purchase a product or a service. So, since we're looking at systems, and since we've looked at the LMX relationships, let's look at relationship patterns here between the different levels of the system. There is a top to bottom relationship. The top is responsible for the system. Now, Oshie brings up somebody that we haven't talked about yet. That's called the end. The end is, okay, so top, middle, bottom. That's vertical. Customer provider, that can be vertical. In the end to middle, that is within a level of the system. You've got somebody in the middle and somebody on either side. And once again, they're pulling that middle apart. Two or more parties have different agendas for that system. Those are the ends. And then somebody, the middle, is being torn apart. Now let's look at the provider to customer relationship. Here, one party, meaning the provider, provides a service or a product to the customer. The customer comes and wants that service. They feel that they're being charged too much or that the service is of poor quality. They feel that they've been, as Oshri put it, screwed. Now we have a video by Schillinger, and let me double check. I want to see if we actually have that coming up in the module. If not, then I need to look it up real quick because it's very important. It's an important little video. No, we don't. So I'm going to, let me find it real quick, okay? So just go ahead and get yourself a sip of your favorite beverage or something like that. Give me like a minute and a half and I'll have the video pulled up. The computer works with me. I lost the mouse. Really, Brian J? I literally had to go there and do that. Literally just Mondays. Schillinger. Okay, power and system in the work. The mouse keeps disappearing. Now let me come back over here and pull that up in YouTube, and we will have it real quick. No, I want YouTube. I said you to no, I don't want to try anything for free. There we go. I think I just found it. Okay, it is a 30-minute video, and what we're going to do is I'm going to post it in the announcements. Okay, we're going to discuss it right now, but I'm going to post it in there so you can watch it. And I really highly encourage you to do that because it is very valuable information. So now if I can. Okay, let me stop the share. I'm going to have to do it all over again. That's okay. Okay, now I'll get my mouse all the way over here to the next screen. Find the mouse. Ah. What makes this difficult is I'm having to work backwards. Literally. Schillinger. Here, where are you at? So close. Ah, found it. Okay, so I'm now lost my cursor again. There we go. I think we're back now. So, so in the video by Schillinger, you're going to see that there is actually an individual, last name is Bordeaux, and he's talking about, and from if I recall correctly, he's worked with Barry Oshry, or he uses the system in presentation. So he's very active in the workshops and presentations of systems thinking. Bordeaux discussed the patterns that are all too easy for people to get trapped in, such as dysfunction and harming others within the system. Remember, a system is a great opportunity for people to become better individuals, for products to become more innovative. It's also the breeding ground of dysfunction and harm because it's human beings. And if you've taken organizational behavior, you've learned how something that is positive also usually has a negative side when it's applied with a malintention. Bordeaux noted that there is a form of voluntary servitude to some degree when you trade your own time and energy to receive money. So, you have a job. You agree to no longer have the ability to say what you do for that 8-hour stretch. You, in order to receive that money, are now under somebody's direction for what they want you to do. If you remember to motivational theory, that is the exchange theory of motivation. You are exchanging your time, energy, and effort for that paycheck. Now, most people do operate under the exchange theory of motivation, and that's not a bad thing. But remember, there is the area now where you, by willingly becoming part of this work system, that system of that organization that you work at, you sign away some of your autonomy during the 8-hour stretch when you're there. And of course, that doesn't work. Okay, what you're going to see in that video, and I want you to make sure you catch us, that we can be in a system, yet totally blind to it. Sometimes we're in a system and we don't see that it is a system because it's real small or real insignificant. Or maybe we're so focused on what we do in that system. Remember, the elements are very focused. When you're looking at them, you use the proverbial microscope. And when you want to see the system, you have to step back and use synthesis to see the interconnectedness. Well, if you're not looking for interconnectedness, all you see is the task you're doing. Maybe you are a widget maker. You're on the design team. That's all you see. You don't see the other components of the system. And Bordeaux mentioned that the workshops that Oshry conducts, that he gives a brief overview of what those workshops entail. And what that is that people have the chance to be part of a system while seeing the other parts of that system. So instead of just going in and doing your job, you're seeing that there's the human resources department, there's the accounting department, you have your the side that deals with sales, the side that deals with acquisition of property. You got these different aspects, and you begin to learn about the stress that they face in that system. In the system of this university, you as students primarily interact with professors, you interact with the advisors, you interact with the dean, the athletic department, but maybe you have never interacted with the people that run the social media side of the organization, or maybe those that actually work at gaining grants so the school can have more funding. There are people in this organization, the organization of Cleary University, that if you saw them, you probably wouldn't know who they were, or let alone what they did in the system of Cleary University. But they're an integral part. And the workshops that OSHRI conducts, they let people see all these other elements and their functions inside of that system. Bordeaux echoed what we found in OSHRI's book pertaining to what tops experience, which, remember, that includes complexity and accountability. Bottoms face the feeling of vulnerability, and middles feel torn in multiple directions. So in these workshops that OSHRI puts on that Bordeaux's talking about, if you're assigned the role of being a bottom, you, over the course of that workshop, will begin to feel that vulnerability. If you're assigned as a middle, you're going to feel that everybody wants something from you and you don't have it to give. You're going to feel torn. You're going to feel these things in those workshops. And yes, you can go on YouTube and look up videos of these workshops, and I would recommend that. Customers, of course, they're going to feel neglected, and they're going to feel that because people are assigned to being customers. Now, this can create a dichotomy of the us versus them mentality. Okay? When the customers feel neglected, that they see themselves as they're the customers, they're their own group. The organization is the them. And when we start seeing the us versus them, we're actually falling into an aspect of the social exchange theory and social identity theory, from which come the in-group versus out-group mentality. Because that's basically what the us versus them mentality is. And Bordeaux discussed how the tendency for tops to take on all the responsibility creates an atmosphere where middles and bottoms cannot approach them to contribute new ideas or to challenge the status quo. In many organizations, the area between the tops and the middles and the bottoms is this vast wasteland of no psychological safety. Nobody can approach the senior leadership. You can't bring your ideas to the senior leadership. You may take it to your middle, the middle management, your team lead. But your new idea might get swallowed up by that system and forgotten about. Because let's face it, if you're in the middle or at the bottom, many times that senior leadership don't even realize you're there until they need you. And that's true in many systems. And I don't think it should be true. I think the senior leadership should interact with every person in that organization, that they should build up this rapport so the lowest person can contribute ideas. So that contributor and challenger safety doesn't exist in a system where the tops are so far above the rest that there is no ability to contribute, no ability to challenge. There is no psychological safety in that situation. Bottoms can become concerned that they are not crucial to the tops, or that no one sees how they are treated. This can lead the bottoms to always be in a state of anger toward the senior leadership, toward the tops. And you can know if you're a bottom if your energy is focused on them, meaning the tops. Remember, this is that direct application, or direct, not application, but that direct aspect of the social exchange theory and the social identity theory, where the us versus them mentality comes from, the in-group versus out-group. The bottoms and the middles have become the out-group, the pariahs that the tops do not want to soil their hands by interacting with. The tops know best. Senior leadership, well, I'm the VP, I know best. I'm the president, I'm the CEO. Really, you wouldn't be in that position without the middle management, without the team leads, without the line managers, without the people operating the line, without the janitors. Your position relies on everyone else in that organization. And if I can get people in organizations to see one thing, that might be the one thing I would choose. Because from there, you can begin to bring up empathy. From there, you can bring up concern. From there, you can address corporate social responsibility applied internally towards the staff. From there, you can look at corporate social responsibility applied externally toward the customers and the community. If you can get the senior leadership to realize they're not above everyone else. Okay, Act 2. We're going to touch a little bit into that today. Oshie wrote, when the dance of the blind reflex is all there is, it remains invisible to us because we're in that dance. It is only when some variation or mutation occurs that one is able to see both the regular pattern and its alternative. These mutations happen when there is some disruption in the system, when there is constructive dissent, as Clark put it. When constructive dissent rises up, now you've got a mutation. Now, destructive dissent is also going to occur. Remember that the bottoms, they feel invisible, they feel vulnerable, they feel that no one cares about them, they feel that they are the pariah, that they're pushed out, that they can't contribute. Of course, a negative disruption is going to occur. And when that occurs, when that negative dissent occurs, destructive dissent, when that occurs, you've got a mutation. Now, are you going to use that mutation? Are you going to use that to correct the problems in the system? Or are you just going to excise the problem? Like a surgeon removing a cyst, are you going to fire those people? Because I guarantee that if you just fire those people that are having that dissent, you're going to hire new people. And it won't be very long until they also are expressing that same discontent, that dissent. Clark discussed the need for dissent. Remember, dissent is not bad. We prefer constructive dissent. But if psychological safety is not being applied in that system, then the only dissent that might be able to occur is the destructive dissent. So use that to spawn a new direction for the organization. There is something called a bifurcation graph, and I've talked about it a bit before. Basically, you have a line, you have your x-axis, and you have your y-axis, and the organization is going along, and it comes to a point of chaos. The bifurcation occurs, you got this looks like a little heartbeat monitor, ups and downs, points, peaks, and then two lines come out of there, meaning two potential paths. One will lead one direction, one will lead a different direction. So when we hit these moments of chaotic change, these moments of uncertainty, we have a choice because we're going to bifurcate, whether we want to or not. It's going to happen. But if we strategically look at the situation and choose the better of the two paths, then we can accept that chaos, that uncertainty, embrace it like we've talked about, and allow creativity to breed innovation, and the innovation to bring something into a new emergence of a policy, procedure, plan, process, idea, perspective, something we hadn't considered before. So organizations need that dissent. And if they're not going to welcome it through psychological safety, then it's going to happen through destructive dissent. The dance of the blind reflex continued. This dissent, as I've already said, needs to be constructive. Sometimes a leader can assign somebody to be the dissenter. We're on a team. I say, Peter, you are going to be the constructive dissenter for the next quarter. I want you to go through our policies. I want you to go through our procedures. I want you to go through our mission and our vision, everything you can about the team, how we communicate. Find things that you can dissent about. Find things. You're playing the devil's advocate. In Greek philosophy, there was a group of people called the sophists, and they would argue anything. You paid them enough money, they would argue any point. Not that they believed it, but they would argue it. Well, your dissenter, your creative dissenter, is kind of like a sophist. You bring them in and you say, have at it. Find what is broken. And if it's not broken, find something that could be better, that we haven't maximized its potential. And then we let Peter go at it. And he comes back periodically. He says, I found this, I found that. And now we got something we can use when these moments of bifurcation, this chaos erupts. We now have a direction because we encourage dissent. Now, you can also encourage dissent without assigning somebody to that position. And that is just really training your team that you accept their feedback. There's positive feedback and negative feedback. You want both as a leader. You want it to be constructive, and positive and negative feedback both can be constructive. It helps you build something up to being better than it is. Destructive dissent can build things up, but it takes more effort to apply it and try it and work at it. But if all you can get is destructive dissent because you don't have psychological safety for teams, then that's all you have to work with. So this constructive dissent, this is also a feature found in the challenger stage of psychological safety, if you recall. Oshry pointed out that sometimes these mutations occur through simple questions offered by individuals in that system. Simple questions. You could be having a little conversation at the coffee pot, and Peter's there, and he has not been assigned to be the center. He just happens to be there. And he asks a question. Why do we do it like this on our team? Simple question. That can help stimulate a mutation. And the mutations, if you apply them and use them and work with them, will benefit your team. But if you choose to ignore these mutations, you are holding on to that status quo of the past that is in the past for a reason. It may have worked for a time, but we've moved past that moment. Time marched on forward. We can't respond to today's problems in the exact same way we responded to them 10, 15 years ago. Even 10, 15 months ago, we can't do that. There are new variables at play. There are new factors impacting the system. So here again, we can see Clark's challenge of safety at work and challenging status quo. There must not be a toxic work environment where the person is ridiculed for making a challenging statement or question. So Peter, he's an employee on my team. He has not been assigned to be the constructive dissenter. We're at the coffee pot. He asked me, why do we do it like this? If I allow people on the team, or if I myself as the leader ridicule him for asking that question, he will now self-censor. He will no longer ask questions. He will no longer contribute his ideas, his point of view, his perspective. I now have alienated him. I have pushed him away. I have proven to him he is in the other category. He is not part of the team. And that's a bad place to put somebody. Oshry noted that these challenging statements or questions could seem very confusing, and often the confusion seems to come from the same person making the remark. So Peter asked the question. Well, that was good. So Peter asked the question, did we get confused in that system? Now we're thinking Peter caused the confusion. Did he really cause the confusion? Or maybe the underlying reason he even asked the question is the reason. Maybe our process is not effective. And he sees that. And he asks the simple question. He's not the source of the confusion. Our ineffective process is the source of the confusion. So as a leader, we need to assign the category, the right. Sorry, I'm being distracted by what's going on in the hall right now. Usually the door is open as on. Keep it down out there. Sorry about that, class. I happen to know that student. He's in my class tomorrow. That'll be fun. Anyway, I think I've talked this one there. Okay, so we'll move on. The pivotal moment comes, as Oshri wrote, the shift that fundamentally transforms our world. Can we be in partnership around the life of the system? We've got to ask ourselves, once we understand what comprises our system, when we can begin to see the interconnection in the system, can we be in partnership in this particular system the way that it is? Oshri asks, can we step back and see the system even though we're a part of it while dealing with the various mutations necessary for the dance of the blind reflex to stop? Can we fix the system from inside the system? I think we can. I think that if people pause their ego, pause their pride, see that system for what it really is by looking at it as a disinterested third-party individual, they can see where these mutations originate from. They see the brokenness in that system, and they can begin working towards solving it. However, it requires that they stop being blind. You have to choose to see the system. Oshri has already mentioned several times that the bottoms do not trust the tops. So what really is he talking about here? He pointed out that the real problem is not about the top's worthiness to be trusted, but the member's ability to be trusted. So we begin to see a shift in perspective. We see a shift in perspective beginning. So the top is there, and we don't have to really, it's not their worthiness to be trusted, but their ability to be trusted. They may be worthy of trust, but are we able to trust them? Have they demonstrated that they deserve that trust? Oshri wrote, there are two parallel myths about leaders. The first is that all progress comes from the actions of enlightened leaders. The second is that all the horrors of humanity, warfare, oppression, genocide are attributed to demonic leadership. He's using hyperbole here. Just kind of see the tone that he's talking about. We think that the leaders of this system, that they are where anything that leads to progress comes from. But the bottoms and the middles and the customers and the ends can and should be able to contribute into that system through their interconnectedness. So perhaps some of those positive actions come from the enlightened leaders, some from the bottoms, some from the middles, some even from customers. And the second about the horrors of humanity, the warfare, oppression, genocide, they're attributed to bad leadership. Well, sometimes that's true, but sometimes the system itself is broken. And maybe the leader doesn't even see it. This is why it's so important to learn to step back. You look at the elements, you step back and you look through a different set of glasses. You look at that system as a whole. You look at it holistically. Try to figure out where the defects originate from, where the problems originate from. I have found that oftentimes it's not necessarily the source that we originally thought. the citizens, and that's what we are at this moment referring to the elements of a system. So in this class, the students would be the citizens. I would be a citizen of this system because I'm part of this system. We're a part of a class. The citizens are just as responsible for the outcomes of the systems they comprise. So if this class is to be a success, I have got to contribute to that. You have got to contribute to that. If we contribute together, we can make this system successful. If part of us do not contribute, we reduce our ability to attain success. Singy noted that the world is highly interconnected. He was talking about systems thinking. The world is interconnected through social media, through commerce, through banking, through trade, through travel. But we got to be able to identify the interconnectedness. And we got to evaluate the quality of the interconnectedness. I could have 1,000 friends on Facebook, but in real life, I have 2 friends. What level of interconnectedness do I have with my 2 real friends? Probably very significant. How much interconnectivity do I have with the 1,000 Facebook friends? Probably minimal. There probably is low quality interconnection there. Yet, many times, we see something on Facebook or on Instagram or YouTube or any of the social media platforms, and we just accept it as being true. When we need to validate its veracity, check for its truthfulness. We've got to analyze the content. We got to think critically, just like we would if our best friend was telling us something that made no sense. It doesn't matter where the interconnection is, whether it's a weak or a strong interconnection. We have the responsibility on us to evaluate that interconnection, that context, the content. Singy pointed out that critical fragmentation is alleviated by taking a systems thinking approach. And the influential executive, I'm also going to make sure that that gets put into the announcements because it's a really good video to watch. Critical fragmentation is alleviated by taking a systems thinking approach. That critical fragmentation is when the system appears connected, but in reality, it's disjointed. Was it? I don't know. 8, 9 months ago, I wrote something about disconnected interconnectedness. And I was talking about how when we're so connected, but it is of a very weak value, that it literally is more of a disconnection. When our system is built up of these fragments, we need to be careful about how they influence us. Whether it's at work on a team, at the university in a class, on Facebook, wherever, take time to evaluate that particular system. Now, we're going to go ahead and stop here for today. So we'll be picking up on slide 35. I'm actually going to write that down in my notepad here, slide 35. We will pick up there on Wednesday. If I could spell, that would be nice. That would be really nice. It's just one of those Mondays. Yeah, you have seen me have it like this, where I've had many Mondays like this, and that's okay. You see me have Tuesdays and Thursdays like this, and Wednesdays or whatever day of the week. 4950. Return. Slide 35. There, I got it. All right, I'm going to, does anybody have any questions? I know we've gotten into some heavy stuff, but I told you we were going to be. I think that this is actually some of the exciting stuff because now we're getting to the nuts and bolts of how systems actually function. If you do have questions, feel free to email them to me. I'm going to go ahead. I'll mark, make sure Jacob and Alexander are marked off on the attendance. I'll be posting the slides for the week and the video from today, this afternoon. Last week, I think I made an error in this class and another one. I actually posted slides for this class to a different class, and it was a mess. I got it sorted out. So I do apologize. I'm all too human and I do make mistakes. So I thank you for your patience with me, and you all have an excellent day.
Thank you.
No problem. You take care, Xander.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. See ya.
All right. Take care.